Okay, adequate noticing was provided by sending such notice to the Asbury Park Press, Town Patch, and the Middletown Township Public Schools District website. Notice at the August T. Minor Administrative Offices, elementary, middle, and school. Roll call.
Mrs. Kennedy. Mr. DeFranco.
Here.
Mr. Donlin. Mr. Gimo.
Present.
Mr. Little. Mrs. Columbia. Here. Mrs. Ray.
Here.
Mrs. Stella.
Here.
Mrs. Varney.
Here. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to ask Mrs. Gallagher to present our 2019 to 2020 tentative budget.
Presentation will be up on the screen here, so. And actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to move because we're going to need this computer over here. I guess
Just like to that seat, I'll go to this seat.
You need a power?
I always do. Here we go.
Good evening. Okay, good evening, everyone. We are here to present tonight the tentative budget that the board will be taking action on this evening. It's actually due to the state today, so if the budget's approved, we will be submitting it to the New Jersey Department of Education today. We have had a series of public budget workshops where we have delved into the various areas of the budget and explained, what has gone into it. It's been a long process. We will post this presentation on the website, so if you want to see it later, that's fine. But this is just to summarize where we've come to through all these workshop meetings, and also to give the public some other background that puts things in perspective to show where the district's at right now and where we will be going forward and what challenges we'll be looking at. So the first slide just goes over our approach, and that the budget is tied to the strategic plan, and that we are looking to actually start working on a new strategic plan that will succeed this one. We're entering the last year, and our 1920 budget incorporates adjustments and changes that we've had to make because of reductions in state aid and other funding in our budget going forward. This slide captures what is included in the New Jersey Department of Ed's budget software and their literature regarding things that the Department of Ed is looking for in our budget and areas for us to address, and each of these has to be addressed separately with narratives and evidence that we are including initiatives that support these areas in our budget. So again, this is something we went over at the workshop, and we just want everybody to know how our budget is looked at before it's approved. We're going to dive into a little detail on the revenue side of the budget to give you some background of what the drivers are behind some of the changes that we're looking at going forward. So what this chart represents is our tax levy increases going back from 2004, 2005 to the present. We wanted to go about a 15-year span. And as you can see, before the implementation of first it was a 4% cap, then a 2% cap on the tax levy, the tax levy increases were close to 6% in the budget. As the line goes down, you can see that it trended down toward 2%, was under 2% for a while. We had a few years where it was at 2%. There was one year in 17-18 where the board utilized some of the bank tax levy cap, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but that was basically tax levy that had not been included in previous budgets in order to fund some things in the budget that year. Last year, the tax levy increase was 1.24%, so it was back under 2%, and the proposed budget for this year proposes a tax levy increase of 2%. But this gives you a visual on where we've been with our tax levy increases. We wanted to also capture the history of the bank tax levy cap that we speak about often in our budget presentations. Just to explain what that is for those of you who may not be familiar with it, the state allows a maximum tax levy increase each year in your budget of 2%. And there's also some allowable waivers, particularly for the areas of health insurance, enrollment. Those are the biggest ones that would be applicable to a district. But if the district does not utilize that full authority in any given year, then the amount that was not utilized in the budget is available to use in future budgets, but only for 3 years. If it's not utilized by that point, then it expires and it can never be brought back into the picture. So just to give you some perspective on the amount of bank cap that we've had over the years and what's been used and what hasn't been used, we have had total bank cap generated since it was initially put out there as a concept in 11-12 of a little over $8 million. We've had about $4.6 million of bank cap expired at the time when it ran out on, and it was never put into a budget. We've also utilized bank cap of about $2.4 million. So currently, right now, we have bank cap available because of the fact that we were under 2% in the current year's budget of $1,059,000. That's not being proposed to be used in this year's budget, but it is still available going forward for 2 more cycles. The cumulative effect of the unused bank tax levy cap over the last 9 budget years, so if you took all of those funds that we could have raised in the budgets and it was not raised, and compounded it by the years that have gone by and the increases on those increases, is about $45 million. So again, this is just meant to be a factual presentation just to show the impact of where we are with the utilization of the bank cap. So to put the tax levy further in perspective, our tax levy actual versus tax levy allowable is presented this way. So our proposed tax levy for the general fund for this upcoming year is about $143 million. The tax levy, if we had included all of the amounts that would have been raised under the full taxing authority of the board up to this year, would currently be at $150 million. So the differential there is about $6.4 million. However, when you look at our state aid notice for this year, and one of the ways that one of the factors in state aid is looking at your tax levy that they feel is the local fair share for a community, which is based on wealth calculations. And we did a presentation on that at another board meeting. I'm not going to dive into that in detail, but just so everyone realizes that from the state's perspective, they are looking at our local fair share of tax levy being $172 million. which, as you can see here, even if the district had fully utilized all its authority, it would not have even have gotten close to that $172 million. So this is the sort of the dynamics we're facing here as far as how the state is looking at funding and the ability of a community to fund their budget. This next slide we presented at the last workshop meeting. It's a state aid allocation recap, so you can see what categories of aid we're receiving and where the changes are. The reduction for this year is in the area of adjustment aid, and that's the aid that is slated to be eliminated under the Senate Bill S2 that was passed, and districts receiving adjustment aid, which was meant to hold them harmless after the cuts that were made in 2010, is being eliminated. Our total state aid doesn't just include the general fund state aid, but it also includes this aid for debt service. We have outstanding bonds and we received state aid for that as well. There's a separate tax levy for debt service. So altogether, the district is receiving a little over $18 million in state aid between the general fund and the debt service. This shows our state aid funding as a linear chart to kind of show you the trend that we've been looking at over the past several years. Going back to 2010-11, where the state aid was a little over $20 million. Then we realized the cuts that happened at that time for the subsequent budgets. It got cut to, I think the level at that time was about 13 million or so, 13, 14 million. We then did receive some subsequent increases after that. Then it remained pretty constant over the several years going forward from there. And now, as you can see, it's starting to dip down again, and there is a plan to have it continue to decrease over the next 5 years. Looking forward for our state aid, our current level of state aid for next year's budget is $16,587,000. The next number represents what the state calls uncapped state aid, and sometimes you'll hear discussion by people saying, well, if they just ran the state aid formula without any caps on it for funding, we'd be getting a lot more money. In our case, when they run the uncapped general aid, it's actually less money than we're receiving now because we're being viewed as being overfunded. So if we receive that uncapped aid without any phase-ins or reductions, the state is saying at this point it would be $12,916,000. So the differential there is about $3.6 million. But the Senate bill, like we mentioned before, set forth a plan to eliminate adjustment aid. So our remaining adjustment aid is about $4.6 million, as we saw in previous slides. So that's the aid that they're targeting to eliminate. And the percentages listed at the bottom of the slide are the remaining percentages of reduction that we will be looking at going forward for the next 5 years, because it was a 7-year plan, but last year was the first year, this year is the second year, so we're looking at 5 more years going through 2025. This is also a slide that we presented previously. This is our resident enrollment on our application for state school aid. This is what the state uses to determine the aid component that's driven by enrollment. So as you can see, looking from 2011 to 2018, which is the last October 2018 would have been our last ASSA that we submitted, the enrollment has dropped 632 students, the resident enrollment. So that's about 6.2%. We are also projected, based upon our demographic studies, to continue having decreases in enrollment. You can see, calculating state aid. So the other thing that happened to us this year is that another one of those, I think the last one of those years where we were over 10,000, dropped off of the average. So while we were originally anticipating losing about $430,000 in state aid, we actually lost $552, and some of that was because of the fact that we had one of those larger enrollment years drop off of our average. Another way that we have funded budgets in the past is excess surplus. Excess surplus is monies that we're able to save out of a current budget and basically put into our fund balance, and we could use it to dedicate to a future budget. So back in 2013, we were able to generate, excess surplus of about $2 million. And, on a total budget that's over $160 million, that's, not a tremendously large number. But as you can see, over the past several years, that number has basically gone down to zero. And we do not have any excess surplus now being utilized to fund next year's budget. Another area that we draw from to fund items in our budget are our capital and maintenance reserves, and we have both of those set up. Our balances at the end of June of last year were about $1.6 million in the capital reserve and $704,000 in our maintenance reserve. So during the 18-19 year, as per our budget plan for this year, we utilized $1.5 million out of capital reserve to fund projects, which we presented with the current year's budget. We also took a withdrawal out of our maintenance reserve to fund some unanticipated maintenance expenses that we ran into this year that were not budgeted for, so we utilized that reserve appropriately to fund those. So now, in addition to that, we are also budgeting to use $140,000 out of our capital reserve to fund some of the capital items that are in next year's budget. So as a result of that activity and the fact that we were not able to put any more money into those reserves as a result of the last fiscal year operations, we now have a remaining balance in our capital reserve of about $9,400 and our maintenance reserve of $604,000. So just as a basis of comparison, there are regulations on how large these reserve balances can be. The allowable balances in your capital reserve is basically equal to what's in the district's long-range facilities plan. So as you can see, that's a number that's over $100 million. It's a 5-year plan and includes various improvements that we'd be looking to do in the district over that time. The maintenance reserve is allowed to be 4% of the replacement value of your buildings. So that number for this year came to about $7.7 million. So as you can see, we are well below, any allowable limits for these reserves. Okay, now we have a summary of the budget for this year. So the summary of our proposed budget revenue, including a 2% increase in our tax levy, is detailed here. We did go over this slide at the last budget presentation. One difference here from the last presentation that we have is, as you can see, the last line says transportation fees from other LEAs. Those fees in the last budget presentation were shown as netted against our transportation expenses, but as we are filling out the budget forms for this year that have to be submitted, and they do ask that you separate those, so we have merely taken those monies out of the transportation expense line and put them as a revenue. There's no change in that number, but it's just being presented differently because of the budget software. And here we have the expenses as broken out by different categories and the increases here, regular programs and instruction, special education, all of the different major areas that are included in the budget. Again, I know we went over this all at last week's meeting, but this shows the changes in those items. And Dr. George, if you move to the next slide, they'll continue. And then we have our other costs, administrative costs, transportation, and again, that's asterisk because that's tied to those fees from the other districts that we're hosting rounds from. Capital outlay, as you can see, is only about $1 million this year, down from 1.8. But overall, our total budget for this year is increasing 0.96% over last year's budget, or current year's budget. Another component of the total budget is our debt service, and we talked about the separate levy before. But we wanted to present the detail of the bonds that are outstanding in the district. We currently have 3 bond issues that are outstanding. 2 of them say refunding bonds, and what that means is those bond issues, the original bond issues, were refinanced at one point to get a lower interest rate to save the district money. So the first 2 issues reflect that. The last issue, the 2014 bond issue, was a result of the referendum that was done at that time. and that was related to several projects that we received ROD grant funding for from the state, so we got 40% funding for the state for those projects, but that's the outstanding, well, those are the payments that are due next year on those bonds. The total outstanding bonds at the end of this year will be a little over $55 million. We're basically retiring principal on the bonds of roughly $5 million a year at this point. So this slide demonstrates what the general and debt service fund tax levy impact would be at a 2% increase. So based upon a 2% increase in the tax levy, our operating tax impact for an average assessed value home, which is a little over $444,000 here in Middletown. For last year, the tax impact was $5,520. For this year, it's calculated $5,607, a difference of $87 per year, or $7.28 a month. The debt service tax impact actually went down a little bit, and the reason that went down is because the valuations of the properties here in Middletown have changed and gone up, so that's actually impacted both of the tax rates, and being that the debt service levy, the amount did not go up significantly, the rate actually goes down. So where last year the debt service impact was $221, this year it's $220, so it changed by $1. So total, I'm sorry, if you can just go back. Now compare that to last year where we had a 1.24% increase on the budget. That represented an increase of about $131. So as you can see, because of the changes in the valuations here in town, the impact of a 2% increase this year is actually less than what a 1.24% increase was last year. We also wanted to bring to everyone's attention the various shared services that we participate here in Middletown. We do purchasing with various cooperatives to get good pricing, and we do bids through cooperative entities. We have a joint garbage and recycling contract with the township where we're able to put that out and get good costs, as far as doing all of the garbage and recycling by one contract, theirs and ours. In technology, we procure a good amount of our broadband services through a state cooperative for digital readiness for learning. We also participate in the New Jersey Schools Insurance Group, which is an insurance fund with other school districts for our liability insurance. We also share our skilled trades facilities services with the Township of Middletown. They share some of their skilled mechanics and so forth to service our vehicles, and we share some of our tradespeople in the electric and plumbing area to do work for them. We basically barter back and forth, and that saves both of us money. We also, in transportation, have been really working hard to put together our own jointure routes with neighboring districts for routes that go outside of Middletown. And that's where you've seen the additional revenue that we're looking at for next year. We've had some success with it this year, and we have even more commitment for next year, which is really helping our transportation budget. And another recent entry in this area is the utilization of space at the Middletown Arts Center for our performing arts program at no cost, instead of us having to go out and rent a facility for that. So we are very grateful for all these opportunities. Our budget timeline, today, March 20th, the board will vote on the tentative budget. The district will submit the tentative budget to the county office to be reviewed. They have a certain amount of time to review it. We will have to advertise for our public hearing and publish the tentative budget no later than April 26th, based upon our anticipated public hearing date for the budget, which is May 1st, which is our regularly scheduled. It's really our April voting meeting, but because of the timing of spring break and so forth, it ends up being May 1st. So over the next, roughly 5 weeks or so, we will be waiting to get the budget back from the county. We will be advertising, and we will be looking to move forward for our public hearings. Again, we had several workshops where and those are all posted online if you're looking for more information to support the budget. and your knowledge of the budget, and I would encourage everybody to take a look at that, and this will be posted online as well.
If I could just add, going back to one of Ms. Gallagher's slides earlier, where the time was with budgets where we were really looking at a significant period of flat funding. And when the board was preparing budgets, we were doing it with that mindset and looking at flat funding as it relates to our budgets. What has happened over the last 2 years with a significant decrease in state aid of $1.7 million over the last 2 years, and the projected losses that are increased for the future. And one thing that is concerning even about those projected losses, last year, the projected loss for this year was about $409,000, around up being $522, as you see on the slide. So there's a significant decrease, as Ms. Gallagher put on those slides earlier, for a continued decrease in state aid. We have been working, and you might have heard, some of the districts across the state are suing based on the funding formula and the calculations, which are S2. Others have band together. We're part of a group called Support Our Students. So we're working with superintendents from across the state. Deborah Wright and I went to Trenton to communicate and testify with legislators 2 weeks ago. We are testifying at the budget, the Senate budget hearing on the 28th, next Thursday. Our situation that we're really talking about, and we need to, going back to a previous slide, is we have a decrease in enrollment. We own that. We know we have a decrease in enrollment. Part of why we're losing funding is because of a decrease in enrollment. And so that's projected out to 2022 and all the way down to about 9,100 students, which would be 1,000 less than you saw at the beginning of that slide in 2011. That's a significant decrease, and we as a board and as an administrative team have to plan for that decrease in enrollment. But at the same time, we are working with legislators to tell our story about an increase in our special education population. So we're running about a 13% increase in our special education population. We're only funded at about 50 cents on the dollar when it comes to that. And the real focus is on extraordinary aid and funding formulas for special education, and really meeting with legislators, and our board has formed an action committee that is doing that. We are communicating directly with legislators. I have worked on both sides of the aisle. Very grateful to Senator O'Scanlan, who's taken time and met with us. Members of the board, we're communicating with Vindo Powell, even though we're not in his legislative district. I have sat down also with Senator Sweeney, Stephen Sweeney, met with him. So we're meeting with legislators on both sides of the aisle to talk about the funding formula as it relates to special education, our very unique situation where we're looking at a significant decrease in overall enrollment, but an increase in special education. And during the time that we've been together, I've been superintendent here, we've increased in special education personnel 56. A lot of those 56 staff members, that is on the certificated side alone. There's a fluctuation, as you know, usually throughout the course of the year. There's an increase pretty steadily as it comes to paraprofessionals, but even our certificated staff, child study team members, special education teachers, expansion of programs, all of that has had a significant cost financially as it relates to our budget. So that's what we're doing, working forward. We're not just accepting the fact that we have this significant decrease as it relates to overall state funding. We're kind of focusing on how we're unique, where we believe we need more funding. I have to tell you that the conversations that we've had with the legislators on both sides of the aisle have been fruitful, and they've been supportive, and there's a real positive dialogue going on in that direction. So we look forward to continuing that one. So, thank you. Shut that down.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to open up the mic for public comment on agenda items only, which is the budget, the field trips, and personnel. Okay, seeing nobody come to the mic? Yes. Personnel that's on the agenda.
Is not on the agenda for
No,
tonight.
not for tonight.
It's
That's
on
the
the, it's
27th.
on our workshop agenda,
Yeah,
not on this vote.
Which we're going to speak to right after the, we'll speak to the workshop.
Okay.
This is on the agenda item, which, as we clarified.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to the report of the superintendent.
That the public presentation was not in the effort to be concise and allow the meeting to move forward and allow for public comment. The budget presentation is the superintendent's report. Okay, I'm going to ask Ms. Sanders.
Okay, Ms. Gallagher, can you give us a synopsis for the resolution to approve the tentative proposed 2019 to 2020 school district budget?
Absolutely. The first part of the resolution presents the general fund tax levy that's being proposed, special revenue fund that's included in the 1920 budget, and just to refresh everyone's memories, that's the federal and state grant funding and local funding. Has no impact on the tax levy. It's things that are funded by grants. Then we also have the debt service part of the budget and the amount of debt service tax levy that's looking to be raised. In addition, we are required to do a separate part of the resolution that specifies the use of the $140,000 that we're budgeting to take out of capital reserve. That will go toward two of the projects that are included. This is not the total capital budget, but it will fund the district bathroom improvements and partial improvements to the high school media centers. The other improvements that are in the budget under capital are just being funded by the general revenues. And we also are required to include the travel and related expense reimbursement limits for this year. That's something that's required by the accountability regulations. So on a district-wide basis, we have to set a maximum. That doesn't mean that that's what's budgeted. It just means that that's the maximum that the district can spend across the whole district for workshops and other out-of-district professional development. And that's essentially the whole resolution for the budget.
I need a motion to approve number A1.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Moving on to number 10B, I need a motion to approve B1 through D.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, it's more of a comment. We shouldn't be voting on these things that have already happened. So is there a way that we could get these trips on the agenda in a more longer term manner? Because some of them already happened and some of them are happening next week. So, I mean, I've seen, our trips get approved like a month, 2 months ahead, not trips that have already passed.
Right, there is a clarification on one.
So this was an exception, as you mentioned, we usually have them on well in advance. What happened was, the teachers submit their field trips through an online software portal, My Learning Plan. We were unaware of the fact, nor was our host, Frontline, that there was a technical glitch in over a short period of time where trips were being inputted, but were not routing properly to the approvers. So it was after the fact that the glitch, for lack of a better word, was rectified and our meeting had passed to have those trips approved. They are approved destinations. They are yearly trips. The model, the one that has already occurred, is the Model UN trip. So our policy states that the destination has to be approved, which it was. So we immediately contacted Mrs. Stella and Mrs. Rogers to let them know, Mrs. Stella being the chair of the curriculum committee, to let them know that this had occurred. And we certainly didn't want it to preclude the students from going on a trip that they had fundraised and prepared for.
Now, I don't have a problem with the trips, it's just I don't like voting for things that already happened.
Yeah. So again, it was a technical issue and it was a unique situation that doesn't, to your point, normally occur.
But the destination was approved in the beginning of
Of
the
the year,
school year.
yeah.
So this was just a clarification on the dates.
Yep.
Right, but even so, they're on the agenda for us to vote on, so it must mean something, our vote must mean something.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed?
I don't think we did their motion. I don't think.
Yeah. Want me to do it again? Should I do it again?
With, I think Robin and
I said it to her.
Okay, I apologize.
Abstentions?
I'm abstaining.
Okay. All right, and for personnel? I need a motion to approve numbers 1 through 10.
Seconded.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions?
I'm abstaining on the 10th.
I need a motion to adjourn the special voting meeting and to open the pre-meeting workshop.
So moved. Seconded.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, moving on to our committee reports. Starting with technology.
Good evening. A few items on tonight's committee agenda, information only. First one is New Jersey School Board's NJ Edge item. Earlier this month, I completed the required New Jersey School Boards Association Information Technology Survey through NJ Edge. NJ Edge is a statewide nonprofit research and education network. They entered into an agreement with NJ School Boards this past year to try to provide more affordable technology solutions to K-12 districts. The expectation of that partnership is to allow us and other K-12 educational community technology discounts for shared services, software agreements, hardware agreements, and cybersecurity services. So this is the first step in trying to procure those services. This particular survey actually focuses on IT troubleshooting and help desk support. So we hope to have some results from them soon to see if there's any offers that we can do. The second item is the NJSLA. Last month, Mr. Bernal and I attended the mandatory NJSLA meeting, this annual training. The New Jersey State Learning Assessment, which is formerly known as PARC, has minimal changes for this year. The two main changes are, one, that there's no longer an online practice test ahead of time, and two, the students will no longer be able to test through a web browser. They will only go to test through an app. It doesn't affect us because we have been using the app for the last few years anyway. Testing will begin on the 15th of April. So right now we're in the process of updating all of our cache servers. We have 22 cache servers that hold the tests ahead of time. We're also uploading and downloading the new app for the students. And as the testing day approaches, we'll start downloading the tests and having the caches at the time. The third item is access for ELLs testing. Our access for ELLs testing begins Monday, March 25th. It continues through April 12th. Access for ELLs test is an English language proficiency summative assessments for English language learners. We again prepared that cache server, and that's been running and tested. We just finished downloading tests this week, in preparation of next week, and all the kiosk mode apps that we tested for these places. The last item I have is for the voting agenda is a contract with Turnkey Technologies for a wireless upgrade. This month we are recommending to the board to approve the contract with Turnkey Technologies to upgrade the district-wide wireless LAN network. We concluded our E-rate 470. We carefully went over each bid and created a bid evaluation matrix and found that Turnkey Technologies was the best fit and most cost-effective for the district. As per the E-rate process, we awarded the contract letter to Turnkey, letting them know that they would be awarded the contract under the stipulations that the final budget is approved, that our board approves, and that our E-rate funding is approved. So I have any questions?
I just want to clarify that this project was included in our budget for 1920. It was included at the amount net of the E-rate reimbursement, so we budgeted $280,000. It is $463. It was
Student Services?
Good evening. We're going to be recommending 41 students for home instruction. We're going to be recommending one student for an out-of-district placement at Coastal Learning Center. We're also going to be proposing utilizing the Integrated Medical Alliance for physical exams for students being suspected of being under the influence. We're also recommending 2 resolutions, one recognizing National Autism Month for April, and also one for students attending private schools with a handicap regarding the breakfast and lunch that those schools will provide them to our students at no cost to the district or to the students. Will be incorporated into their tuition. We also wanted to share out the Dare to Dream conference last Friday. We had 9 students that were going to attend. One of our students, an 11th grader, was a keynote speaker. She presented on Thinking Big, talking about how she overcame her disabilities and how she's improved her confidence and, just overall how successful she's been in, self-advocating for herself. So it was a nice opportunity. Students participated in a number of different breakout sessions, talking about career readiness, different things, what they need to do in the workplace, appropriately using technology, self-advocacy, whether that be in school or in the workplace. So it's a nice opportunity for our kids to meet other students from other districts and kind of just share their thoughts. We're going to have the Strikeout Autism Challenge next month, Saturday, April 13th. There'll be a flyer, there'll be different things posted on the website recognizing that. We had Ms. Schreck, Ms. Kent, and Ms. Harrison presented the Mid-Atlantic Personal Learning Program presentation. They presented what the reading workshop looks like in the LLD classroom. So it's a great opportunity for our staff to share what we're doing here in Middletown regarding personalized learning. We are having students from the Mental Health Association present on April 10th. To our paraprofessionals on suicide prevention and awareness. So that'll be here at 3:45. That's going to be funded by the Cody Fund in suicide prevention. We have the RFPs for our related services, OT, PT, and speech. We have 11 companies coming in to interview with us on the 9th and 10th of April. We're also going to be having our mental health board, the April presentation. There'll be an invitation out to board members for April 30th. We're going to have CPC, Bayshore Hospital, Family-Based Services, Mobile Response, and other local agencies that will be there. But we'll be reaching out to the board if members like to attend.
Okay, next we have curriculum and instruction.
There's not much on the agenda for this month for curriculum and instruction, other than the usual recommendation for approval for workshops that are coming around. The over 150 list will be forthcoming, and some overnight field trips that have not occurred yet. We're catching up on all those ones that were held up in the hopper, for lack of a better word. And I just want to echo, in speaking about workshops, Mr. Dunn brought up the presentation that Ms. Schreck and Ms. Kent and others did when it came to what does reading workshop look like in the self-contained classrooms. We also had other administrators present, and the Mid-Atlantic Conference was something we spoke about a couple months ago. Mrs. Sella had shared that we had several administrators who were approved to present. Those types of conferences are great opportunities for our staff. It's almost like a shared service with districts all around the country, and it's a benefit to us because when we offer to present, we get a reduced rate to attend, and then we get to attend other presentations at less of a cost. So when we volunteer, ourselves and our staff, I participated in a presentation as well for 1 hour. We get a reduced rate for participating and attending the other workshops that administrators, staff members, and other districts are presenting, and we took away a lot of really great ideas. We were grateful that we had the opportunity to share, for example, our new middle school schedule. A lot of people had interest in that and attended that session and what that looked like, so we were able to turnkey that. And Some of the things we took away were new ideas for badging for professional development, creative ways that districts in states such as Georgia, we learned from administrators in Georgia of how they're doing professional development that really kind of matches with our personalized learning for professional development philosophy and initiative. So it was a great day of learning for a number of our teachers. Many of them who came up and wanted me to extend to you their gratitude for allowing them to attend and be able to come back with new ideas from other districts and share with their colleagues. Any questions?
Thank you. Facilities and Finance?
We have one item currently on the agenda under facilities. It's the storm drain repair bid at High School North. We have an issue with drainage behind, in the fields behind High School North. We had an engineer that helped us develop specs. We put it out to bid. We did open bids on March 15th. We received 8 bids, which unbelievably range from $58,000 and change all the way up to $200,000. So, but it's fairly there. But obviously, we're going to $58,000 bid, and we're going to be looking to award that next week so we can get started on the repairs. High School fields. We also have as an information item under finance the health insurance contracts that we discussed at last week's meeting, where we had Brandon Brown present to us. Discussing timelines with our broker. If we are going to be looking at options that will require any changes in carriers for any of our lines of insurance, we would like to allow the maximum amount of time that we can get to effectuate those changes and make sure everything goes smoothly. So it would be beneficial for us if we would be able to vote on new contracts for next year at either next week's voting meeting or at the latest, we would want to make April 10th meeting into a special meeting to do that. So as a board and administrative team, we need to decide, which contracts that we will be approving out of the different options that we discussed at last week's meeting.
We should have that discussion now so you know which way to go.
We can discuss that now, and we can also decide about timeline, whether it's something the board wants to address next week or whether they want to address it at April 10th.
I think it makes, the majority of us were here, in the town, you weren't able to make it, but we could certainly catch you up, to go over the plans. I think, it would be best to, I don't think any of us have our materials with us tonight, maybe some of us are more prepared for me, so. But if we could do it next week, I think that the options would be clear cut. And I think that would be most beneficial for the district to get started on that. Much prefer that to the April.
So we would be wanting to vote on that next week.
So I think what our option is whether we want to go with 1 year or we want to secure the second year. That's what we really have to decide, right?
Well, it's whether we want to have a rate cap for the following year or whether we want to just not have a rate cap and realize a little more savings for next year. The differential is around $200,000 between having a rate cap and not having a rate cap.
Do you recommend the rate cap, Tim?
My recollection was that saying it could be beneficial, but it was up to the board's discretion on whether it's
I think regardless of whether or not you recommended the rate cap, I think it's still our decision. So we're going to have to weigh, whether we want to take the security of the rate cap versus the extra savings this year and see where our risk tolerance is.
Board members, if I can just jump in, I would recommend that this discussion be had in closed session under the contract negotiation exception to the Open Public Meetings Act. We're talking about rates and negotiations and contract duration, et cetera. That all is not appropriate for discussion about. He gave a presentation about options, et cetera, last week, which I think was very liberal and transparent to present that in public. To the extent that the board is going to weigh and consider and negotiate amongst yourselves which options are better, It is legally permissible, and I would say required to not be discussed in public, but rather discussed in closed session.
So then there's no way to be on the agenda for next week's meeting, because we meet next week, that's the next time we meet.
It can be on the agenda for next
We
week, you
can
can discuss it in closed
discuss it in closed
session.
session next week and then vote on the option. But
You had the presentation, you had the information, same questions you have tonight or next week can be reviewed with your administration in closed session, you can vote next week. And then if you're not prepared to vote, you can table it and move forward, but there's no prohibition to it being acted on by the majority, Mr. President, vote next week.
And all of the public are privy to this as well, for the full transparency.
And quite frankly, that's something that really doesn't happen, so let it go on, because we understand the board's spirit and intent to be very transparent, and so it was I'll say generically a detailed presentation, but your deliberation of those options should be closed pursuant to applicable law, closed session.
I wish they were on closed session tonight, because we actually have a little bit of time.
We can go back make a motion to go back in closed session. I didn't realize there was discussion about it.
Well, the discussion is to get direction from the board, because, and to update the board on what the preferred timeline would be in order to effectuate any changes that might be
So then rather than deliberate it tonight, which is what I hear Mr. Taylor saying, we simply should come to a consensus that we'd like to put it on the agenda for next week's meeting, discuss it in closed session, and we vote on it in public. That's,
Yes. Well, then, wait a minute. I want to say for next week's meeting, I know we have a lot of impact in next week. So I think we need to have some extra time for closed session to talk about. Just to give us, because if we get into closed session, so maybe. That's the whole thing.
I'm confident the board.
You're confident. Okay. So we'll take care of it next week.
Okay.
I would just also add that if anybody on the board has any particular questions as you're reviewing all the material that you would like to have clarified, before next week's meeting, please reach out to us and we will be able to provide you with those.
It was a very thorough presentation. I feel like, I have all the information that I need from the public presentation.
Also on the voting agenda for next week will be the financial reports for the month of February. We will have some transportation bid awards that have gone out that we're still evaluating. We will have a photography services contract for school pictures for K-8. There's no increase in the price there. Again, that's paid by the families. So we are recommending to continue that. And then we also have a resolution for the approval for competitive contracting for the engagement of staffing services for sub-teachers, substitute paras, substitute secretaries, and some regular assignments that are unable to be filled through the regular recruiting process. Yes.
That's what it is. As we normally would, before voting, as we normally would, the week before the voting meeting, explain the agenda. And I think tonight there might be some significant interest in that.
Before we jump to that, can I ask a question about one of the other items?
Yeah, sure.
Storm drain repair? You mentioned it's like 15,000, 190,000, like, it's really concerned about drainage, especially for us, right? So that differential, we're having a problem next year.
No, I mean, I'll clarify.
That's a big difference.
No, I gave you the range, but there were 8 bids, and the rest of the bids were all in between those. I mean, the next lowest bid was 59,000 and 73, 77, so it wasn't like it was one choice for 58 or 200,000. So it was a whole range between those
And the
two.
company that we're going with is actually,
It looks like it will be BOE paving, and, they have met all of the requirements of the bid and put up whatever guarantees they needed to put up. And our engineer, who has done a lot of this work, has no issue with them as a contractor.
that's the deal.
Yes, yes. So, we know that it has been brought to our attention from administrators, from concerned staff members. We as a central office are concerned.
by the fact that on any given day, we are not able to fulfill our need for substitute positions, including teachers, and that's at a rate of about 10% of the number of vacancies that exist on any given day for certificated staff members. We're unable to secure enough subs to fully meet that need. And when it comes to secretaries, we are often unable to fill the total amount of need of substitutes on any given day. And for paraprofessionals, it's further amplified by the fact that when we look at different months, and the last 3 months in particular as the most recent snapshot, because as Dr. George already explained, over the course of the year, the number of paraprofessionals can fluctuate. So we look more recently at the last 3 months, which is probably the truest number of active paraprofessionals we have as active employees. We are only able to fulfill, on average, anywhere from 40 to 47% of the actual vacancies on a daily basis, of the actual number of vacancies that exist. And that can run as low as 32% on some days. So that is a combination of several factors, and they're stressors that are causing this to occur. Obviously, it's less for certificated staff. As I mentioned, we're able to fill those at about a 90% rate. Secretaries, we do see more of an uptick in not being able to fulfill those vacancies, paraprofessionals being the greatest. And it's not something that's unique to Middletown. We've talked to other boards of education, and they're experiencing the same dilemma. So in Middletown, specifically, we have paid time off vacancies that occur when a paraprofessional or a teacher or a secretary utilizes sick leave, personal leave, or other types of contractual leave, for example, funeral days. Those we are less able to fulfill the needs for. For paraprofessionals, there's also what we call vacancies, and those occur quite often throughout the month for different reasons. So paraprofessionals' schedules or hours are based primarily on IEP requirements. So on any given day, Mr. Dunn can attest to this, we have changes to IEPs occurring as meetings are happening. Students are being newly classified, changes to the IEP are being made or modified, and that can impact the need or requirement for paraprofessional services. As you know, we cannot employ anyone until there has been proper advertisement of the position, recruitment goes with the advertisement of the posting of the position, the interview process, and then this vetting. So there has to be reference checks, fingerprinting, and then it has to make it onto a board agenda. That process can take as long as 6 to 8 weeks. Sometimes greater if we don't have enough qualified candidates applying for the position or demonstrating interest. So then there comes in the opportunity where we need to create what we call vacancies, because the IEP is now a legal document. We are bound by law to now provide those services to that student. That is the expectation of that student's parents and that student's child study team. Upon the next day of implementation of that IEP, we have to start fulfilling that obligation without really being able to hire someone with that type of immediacy. So the vacancies can really cause a strain on our subpool, quite honestly, of paraprofessionals. The vacancies alone cannot be filled by the number of substitute paraprofessionals that we employ. And every month, we advertise, we interview, and we recruit, and we move to recommend new substitutes for all types of positions: secretaries, custodians, paraprofessionals, certificated staff. So we started to look into options for fulfilling our obligation of meeting those IEP requirements. And in talking to other districts, what they found success with was bolstering their substitute pool by partnering with other private agencies who can provide additional substitutes to our avail with really great success. I mean, we talked to other districts, and they said that they are closer to that 90% fill rate like we're experiencing with our teachers, even though we're not, quite honestly, not even happy with that, which is a lot closer to where we would expect to be. So hence why we have the resolution to partner with, to go for bid, to see what our options may be. The other thing that we are looking into is the fact that in certain position types, when it comes to paraprofessionals, we're experiencing turnover rates that are unsustainable, and then therefore also increasing vacancy needs. For example, when a student is newly classified, they may only require one period of support. If that period and at the high schools, we're experiencing the greatest difficulty in accomplishing that with a district employee. Because it's not often that you find someone who's interested in only working 80 minutes a day, because that's what a block at the high school is. Not all students require full-day paraprofessional services. We try, when possible, to add any additional small increments of time to an existing paraprofessional schedule. That's why every month you get a para change report that's multi-pages, where you see that there's increases and decreases to assignments. But in the end, even when you piece all that together, there are odd blocks or odd periods of time that we are unable to build more complete schedules with. So in those cases, when we do advertise, recruit, recommend to you someone to work 80 minutes or 160 minutes a day, or in some cases, if it's a paraprofessional who's escorting a student to a job site, it may even be less. It depends on that student's placement. We employ a person, we train them, we onboard them, and then they're either applying to another position in our district that has more hours available to it, or they're going for employment elsewhere when they can find a position that has more hours. So in those cases, when we're not able to piece those blocks of time or those minutes to an existing person's schedule, hence why again we get that change report and somebody's hours are increased, what we're looking to do is in those high rate turnover positions that start off with like 80-minute blocks, that we need coverage, if we're not able, only when we're not able to recruit someone and retain them, would we look to secure a more permanent substitute, for lack of a better word, or placement using the agency. So that is the personnel side, that's the data and the fact side of why we're looking to kind of partner, use our existing sub-pool that we have because we really value those substitutes, as well as partner with an outside agency to help bolster our pool.
We met with all collective bargaining units to explain this, to make sure that they understood that our intention was to supplement, not supplant, our current services from our current employees. We value all of our employees. The Board of Education takes our responsibility very seriously as being the number 1 employer in Middletown. A lot of our people that work in Middletown, I say this at every hiring meeting there, and if any, I'm sure most of you in this room have been through those hiring meetings with me, you know that I always ask this question: how many people either currently live in Middletown or lived in the past? The majority of the room raised their hands. So, and that's just a testament to the people, because we create a very competitive process when it comes to hiring, and it's our goal to provide the very best services and programs for our students. But Middletown's a great community, so we most often do hire people from within Middletown. And so, this again, our intention as reviewed with all bargaining units was to supplement the current services that we provide, not supplant.
Do you have like how many nurses or how many teaching secretaries hours do we have on the substitute list right now?
Not in front of me. No, not in front of me, no.
Just another thing that I want to say on this too, that when you look at our body of work and the time that we've been together as an administrative team, out of respect for the very, very important work of our employees and the work they do on behalf of our children, our board, it's been our board's vision and it's been our direction as an administrative team to try to hire by the end of the year, as we all know, in some of these positions, they're 1-year assignments. And it's very important to understand that the length of the day and the length of time that, that this work is done is dictated by the IEP itself. And so every year those IEPs are reviewed. There are students that move in the district, there are students that move out of the district, but we work tirelessly to, as quickly as possible, place all of our people. And last year, we placed before the end of the school year, prior to July 1, 98% of our paraprofessional employees. That's our body of work. That's how we value the employees that work with us here in Middletown. Prior to me getting there, that was a process, as many of you know, those who have been here longer, that was a process that happened over the summer, throughout the course of the summer, and a lot of the list didn't happen until August. So, you know, again, our intention based on this competitive contract authorization, this resolution, is to supplement our current services.
I have a question. Just to dispel some rumors, we still will be advertising and hiring paraprofessionals to work for the district.
Yes.
It's not that we're going to put a stop on it and not hire and distribute the agency. We're still going to look for qualified paraprofessionals to hire.
The agency, when it comes to positions outside of subbing, will be utilized when we are unable to fill a vacancy through the normal course of the posting, recruitment, interview process. They have a wider reach of candidates and potential candidates, so that when we run through a posting, oftentimes we do a posting and then we have to extend the posting because we haven't got any, applicants. And that further delays, getting someone in there on a full-time basis to start those services that are attached to that student's IEP. Leonore, I just want to, I do have some information. I don't have the list of substitutes, but just to frame a little bit more of what I was throwing out there in terms of percentages, and sometimes, like I know for me, numbers make more sense than percentages. So we looked at, say, like a snapshot. We look at it every month, now that this has been brought to our attention. And using the time period of January 2nd, which was the first day back after winter break, through February 4th, we zoomed into that and did a deep dive analysis. When it came to MTEA certificated staff members, we had about 963 absences that we needed to fill. And we were able to do that at 93% rate, which means that very few of them went unfilled. As comparison with the paraprofessional secretaries are a much smaller number. It's probably less than 50 because they're a small group. As comparison to our next largest group, the paraprofessionals, where we have 294 total members currently. During that same time period, we had 491 absences that were paid time off in addition to vacancies, and the vacancies were for the reasons that I previously explained. And we were able to fill those needs at a rate of 32%. So about 157 of those vacancies were able to be filled, which adds a lot of strength, quite honestly. If you're a paraprofessional who's working in a self-contained room with a teacher and one or two other paraprofessionals, when one of your colleagues isn't there, it adds, in addition to it not being optimal for the students, and that's always our first priority, as Dr. George says, it adds additional constraint on the other adults left in the room when that vacancy hasn't been filled by another individual, to assist. So, that's kind of like what we're looking at right now. Those are the numbers. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to policy.
I'm just explaining that we have policies that are on the first reading and second reading. The second reading policies are policies we went over previously, and they will be for adoption. But we do have several that are for first reading that this is our first look at them, and Mrs. Walker's going to talk about this.
I'll just go through them quickly. Most of them are minor changes to definitions or wording. The first one, the practice and preseason, it allows for the district to decide 2 ways to create a plan for the preseason practice acclimation. They can either create their own or use the NJSIAA. That's what we do. We select that one. That's what we've been doing, and it also provides for an annual review of that plan, which we already do. The service animal is, that's new to us, but that's a requirement by law. Title 2A of the ADA does require the use of service animals for students with disabilities or adults with disabilities if the support is required, so that's a policy there to cover that. There's also 4 policies that cover basically the same thing. When we report to the state, we do it twice a year, the incidents of violence, vandalism, substance abuse, HIV. The state used to have a platform called EVVRS, the Electronic Violence and Vandalism Reporting System. They've changed that platform, and now it's the SSDS. It's a different platform, and that's the Student Safety Data System. So these policies, it's the 5611, 5612, 5613, and 8461. The major changes in those policies are to change EVVRS to SSDS. So there's really no change to those policies, in terms of how we deal with anything in the policies. The other policy that's new for us is the transgender students. A new law was put into place in 2017 that required the Commissioner of Education to come out with guidelines for schools on transgender students and, our procedures. And the Commissioner just did that this year. This policy is basically those guidelines that the Commissioner came out with. Even though we never had the policy, we have followed those procedures for the last 2 years, so there's going to be no change in our procedures for our district. It's just making a policy that's mandatory that follows the Commissioner's guidelines. And that's about it for those policies. There is another policy that's not on here that we're going to put on either next week for first reading or in April. And that's called eligibility of residents and non-resident students. And there's some minor changes of language in the policy. But one of the options, we get these policies from Strauss Esme, and often there's options that you can change. You can choose. There's a major policy, the requirements, and then the board has some options. And in the past, the options that have been chosen for this particular policy is not to accept tuition students that just the parents want to send their students here. We do accept tuition students that other districts, we've made agreements to accept their students. And the sending district does pay for those students, but this would be different. This would be for students who just opt to come to Middletown schools. And there's 3 general categories. The first one is the F1 visa students, and those are students that get a visa. They live in another country, they're citizens of another country. They get a visa to come to the United States for the purpose of getting an education. And the law requires them to pay in advance tuition to pay tuition, it can be in advance. It requires them to pay tuition to a public school if that's the school they're going to go to. So if they're going to go to a public school, they are required to pay the full tuition. We've always said we don't accept F1 students, but the board can consider actually accepting these students. And we do get requests once in a while. It's not a lot, but we actually got 1 this year, and we got, I think, 2 or 3 last year. And we had to say no because our policy doesn't allow that. Another option is to allow students or children of employees that don't live in the district to also attend our school for a set amount of tuition, and the board would set that tuition. Then the last is to just let other non-resident students be accepted into our school. And there's a process that we would have to create on what students be accepted, what the requirements were, and what the procedure was to determine which students were, selected. It could be based on in our enrollments, in certain schools, that type of thing. But I just wanted to start basically a conversation or the thought in your mind, like where do you want this policy to go? Do you want to stick with, we don't accept tuition students, or open it up all the way or partially to some of these options? All right. So, it's just, I guess, food for thought, and maybe we'll have a discussion, later on. Maybe you can think of some questions, maybe for the next workshop, and we can start the conversation then. Okay.
Or contact us directly as well.
Yeah, contact me.
I had a question for you. Who decides what school the child goes to.
That would all be procedures that we would have to, if the decision was to open it up to non-resident students, those are procedures that we would have to look at. We'd have to come up with a set of procedures, how much to charge, how, what our requirements would be, how we would determine which schools they would go in, that type of thing.
But the preliminary discussion would be, as it currently is now implemented, would be a major factor as it relates to that as well.
Enrollment in commercial.
Yes.
Okay, that's it for policy. Informational items,
Do we have another policy?
are we gonna have to-
Removal of students?
Those were the ones that I said were the ERS versus SSDS. That's pretty much the major change in those policies.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a couple of definitions, like they expanded the definition of school, what a school ground is, but it basically doesn't change the policy. The policy is pretty much the same. The reason they changed it was to change that ERS to SSDS. School district security, that's what I did miss. That was a fairly new policy last year, and last year it was to create a position called school safety specialist. And this person got special training from the state. They had to go for a week's worth of training. But they were limited to selecting a certificated administrator. And a lot of districts, including our district, reached out to the NJDOE and said, and also the Office of School Preparedness, University Office of School Preparedness, and said, listen, the top guy in our district that really knows security best, that should be named this person and should be getting this training, isn't a certificated person. He's our security supervisor. He's been a police officer. He's the person that should have this title. NJDOE heard us, and they've changed their position, and they now allow for the school safety specialist to be a non-certificated person. And this happened a couple months ago. We actually have John Flyer on the agenda to be named that. This is just the policy. We're just catching up throughout that policy. So that's the change. The policy is exactly the same. It just allows us to name somebody else as that. All right.
Well, one thing in terms of the removal of students again, some of the other changes I see besides the system I see we're talking about in terms of the student safety, but also talks about the superintendent may modify on a case-by-case basis the removal of general education student, right? So if I look at this policy, removal of students for firearms offenses, it says that basically removal.
Let me just say, you're on one for removal of
I'm on
firearms or
5611,
other weapons?
firearms.
For firearms.
So they said that the student, basically said the student will be immediately removed from the school general education program for a period of not less than 1 calendar year. Is that what's required by law? I think if there's a firearm problem, the person would be back in school.
Well, it's minimum. The law says a minimum of 1 year.
Right, but it says the superintendent can modify, but can we ever say straight out that that's going to be gone? Like, in other words, not even 1 year, like just straight out say that. That seems like a very, because that's the same penalty you get if you
There
like
is
without
such a
it.
myriad
What section you
of
looking at?
activities that could be.
5611.
What paragraph? It's like a 4-page
It's like
policy.
the second paragraph.
What page of paragraph?
Page 1 of 2. Removal of student firearms. It talks about not remove the student for not less than 1 year, then the superintendent can modify it. And I was just wondering, the change the superintendent can modify, like, they just say, he's going to cheat list, right? Because if you go, there's also other policies about weapons other than firearms.
But
State penalty.
but it also says that that's in alignment with 6A 16.5-5.5B.
Right, which means.
So that's you're in alignment, like, these policies mirror what the law says. So I don't know if you can just make that change.
Well, I guess I'm asking, is alignment.
That's why I asked the question. because-
It just seems that penalty is like kind of light.
It references the administrative code there. I don't have the code in front of me. So the superintendent could not modify the penalty or the suspension to a lesser period than required by law. And so we can.
I'm talking about more, like not lesser. Not
Well, forever did, so in New Jersey, students are entitled to a free and appropriate public education, basically from 3 to 18 or 5 to 18, and 21 actually, special economics. And so when a student is on a long-term suspension, longer than 10 days, they still are entitled to services and education, whether it be home instruction, out-of-district placement, etc. When a student is expelled from school, i.e. forever, as you indicated, that's a misnomer, because the district is still required to pay for and provide an education. It's just in an alternative setting, at home or some other location. So you never rid yourself of a person or a student from the obligation to educate them. This is something, this is just for first reading tonight, so this is not going to be binding in effect. What I would suggest is that we can take this under advisement, give you some more information before it's finally adopted. Even if it is adopted, it can always be modified, as you're aware. But you would need to get consensus from your colleagues if you wanted to codify in policy some more stringent local requirements. I.e., incident happens, while the law might say minimum 1 day, subject to discretion, we want a minimum of 6 months. So that's great. We need more votes to make that happen.
No, understood. I was asking the question because the state, or the state says they listen to that. The student has to get to school for at least a year. I don't know the time. So.
Can I also add that there's a myriad of circumstances that a child can bring a gun to school. It could be a second grader who put something they saw on the table in a household that, you know, whether the gun should have been there, I mean, obviously it should, but whether it's a legal gun or whether it's in their backpack because they thought it was cool. And, you know, they're first grader, they're kindergarten, and they don't understand. This policy would apply to them. So in that a circumstance like that, after police were called, CP, you know, we went through all our procedures, we may determine that it really wasn't the child's fault, but according to this policy and the law, we have to abide by what the law says. So that may give the superintendent some latitude in a case like that.
First of all, I just want to say that the superintendent would never work in a vacuum on that. We would not only follow state law, but as already pointed out by Mrs. Walker, there are a myriad of different circumstances that could arise, and for us to take it past the level that we evaluate every child on an individual basis within the law with looking through all the processes that we go through and all of the documentation that we would review, not only legal, but medical and all the other experts that would be involved in a decision like that. That's why it's as wide open as it is.
Why I asked that too, because it does say convicted, right? It says convicted. It says knowingly found in possession. So it indicates here that it would be someone who was.
I don't have the policy.
Yeah, so in other words, to be a minor would probably not be convicted.
Well, you're right. A minor would be adjudicated delinquent, which that's in here as well.
Okay, so that's
And is that, are you looking at something that's new in the policy, or is that?
well,
something that's
I
been-
saw the new part was the superintendent may modify.
Yeah, it's just the existing language, existing law is that if an adult student 18 or over, or a minor student 17 or younger, is not just found with a weapon in their possession, they have to be adjudicated and do accountability through the court system.
Right.
If that happens, then they are removed for a year. The new language gives the superintendent the ability to modify on a case-by-case basis. I don't have the code in front of me. I presume the modification could be a lesser period. I don't know, but quite frankly, it could be a recommendation to extend the period. I just want to look at the code provisions, okay, we can come back to you.
Yeah,
But
I was thinking more high
changes.
school.
Yeah.
And then one other question about, you mentioned the first policy about the
Preseason heat?
yeah, preseason heat. Do we have, does the NJSIAA have temperatures? Like in other words, if temperatures over 85 degrees, can't
Not only
practice.
temperature, I think it's humidity, it's
Yeah,
the
like
whole,
the
it's a
count.
formula, yeah. It's very extensive.
Is that a notification that the athletic director gets? Like, I asked some youth leagues, they said that
You use that, they have
A
a
member of the NJSI executive board, not only are they aware of it, they're actually directly involved by committee in setting all those parameters and making sure that every district has the appropriate it's stuff that has to be taken on the field because, for example, turf field is very specific to that facility in that place, what the lid is like. It's all very specific to the facility, so there's specific devices that need to be able to measure that. And that's all been part of this discussion on this, as it relates to this policy.
I'm sorry, who was the coach making the call or the athletic?
No, it's the athletic director under advisement of the site manager and/or person in charge of taking those readings. Oftentimes, it's the athletic trainer along with the site manager and the athletic director. It's not the coach.
Thank you.
By design.
Yes. All right, the next item is the before and after care, the Y. We are in the third year right now of our 3-year contract with the Y for our before and after care. And so that contract comes to an end on the 30th. So to create a competitive process for going forward, next September, we are planning to put out an RFP for the before and after care. We actually met with the Y today to discuss this and some other things about the Y. They offer, for us, they do our before and after care, but they also do counseling in our schools. So I just wanted to give you some information that they provided to us today about the before and after care. They actually have 932 students right now in the Y before and after care. They're in all 12 elementary schools. They're not in the middle schools, but they provide middle school coverage with the middle schoolers going to nearby elementary schools, like, Bayshore would go over to Leonardo, that type of thing. And I think we have 2 schools that there's a few students that do that. They have 45 to 50 staff, and at this point, we have no waiting list. We did have some in the beginning of the year, as they were trying to get up to full staffing, but they failed. We've also provided them with information on additional spaces they can use within the building. There are licensing requirements, so they're working right now with the state to get those rooms. Well, every room has to be licensed. We have to actually identify a room that they can use, and then the state comes in and licenses that room based on their parameters. So we're working on that so that they can use additional spaces other than the all-purpose rooms in the building. That can be used to separate students. Some can go to the library or the media center or a classroom where there's flexible seating and doing some projects, while other kids are playing basketball in the gym. It's going to provide a better atmosphere and more options for the program. We were also told that they're putting out a survey right now to all the parents to get feedback, so we're interested to hear what that's going to say, so that we should get that in a month or so, I guess. They also do Y counseling in our schools. 5 of our schools are have the Y counseling in, that's up and running. 3 of them have just recently got licensed, so they're going to be starting in a week or 2 counseling there, and then we have another student who's coming online next year. But for the 5 that are currently online, since September, they've seen 382 clients. The clients are students and/or families. It might be a student and a parent, or 2 students and a parent, that type of thing. They've had 1,038 sessions, and it covered 1,557 hours. So these services are really being utilized. These are very, highly utilized social, emotional, resources for our students. And the principals can't say enough about having that in our buildings. Also, I wanted to tell you about a $15,000 grant, that was being applied for by Student Services. Actually, Jamie Gransky and the Mental Health Board. It's for social emotional learning that they want to bring into the Title I elementary and middle schools next year. So we're hopeful, but we're going to see pretty soon. I think she said the end of April we'll find out. Let me see. The mental health professionals in our schools, like the school psychologists, are also pushing in with social emotional learning lessons right now in certain elementary schools that showed interest. And they're trying to build capacity and excitement for these programs so that it will expand next year. As Mr. Dunn explained, there was We're going to be having on April 30th, a district-wide mental health services meeting where they're going to be talking about all the different resources. They're bringing different social emotional resources in to talk about what they do, and the board members are invited to that. That's at central office at 9:30 on April 30th. There's going to be psychological first aid training by the Traumatic Loss Coalition in May to like our guidance counselors, CST, SBSSs, and SACs. The mental health board members are also going to be providing professional development at our May PD session. And also last week, we did the vaping presentation, dangers of vaping and substance use on Monday night, I believe it was. It was a really good session. The guest speaker was Nikki Francis from Wellspring Center for Prevention. She did an excellent job, gave out fantastic information. That was videoed and it's on our website, so I recommend everybody go and watch that. It is eye-opening to say the least. Just so much information that parents really were thankful, and everybody learned it. Administrators were there, they learned stuff. It was amazing. Scary, but amazing. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm a little confused on the RFP. Is it mandated we go for an RFP? Because it kind of sounds like you're giving them a good, credible evaluation and how much they do for us. Yet we're going out for an RFP. I don't understand.
It's to see what options are out there to create a competitive process so that will keep prices down for our parents. You know, it's just to see, okay, this is how we're doing it, this is great. Is there a better way you can do it? Is there a more economical way to do it for our parents, whether it's through the Y or another company? But it's...
Are we separating the before care and after care to the services that they did for our kids during the day?
Yeah, that's totally different.
That's where I'm
Yeah, the Y counseling is different in that there's no RFP for that. Okay, yeah, just for before and after care that we're going to.
Okay, that's
We'll see the
So I'd like to add on that too. Yes, we can bring forward the future results.
You've different experience across different schools, based on layout of schools, and there's some staffing issues there this year, so I'll be interested to see what parents think about. If it's going after, I know it's affordable, but there's sometimes
Can I tell you, this year, I think, has been our best year with the before and after care. In terms of the number of students, the number of their activities, how well it's going in the school.
I'd just like to weigh in on this for a second. So here's what we think. The Y is a great partner on a lot of levels for us. A whole other thing we didn't even talk about is the Bayshore Family Success Center and the great things that are happening there. I've attended a lot of services programs for our students, their parents, families. They do a great job. We're talking about students that sometimes are in these programs for as long as 12 hours a day. We feel like we really have a responsibility to make sure, and we had a great dialogue, conversation with them today. I think that as we pointed out in the past, remember Y last year was our partner of the year, one of our partners of the year. And we talked about the great dialogue we have currently with the administration there and the open dialogue. The latest thing that they're doing with data, we talked about continual data points, surveys, talking about counseling, exactly how much we have. But let's get back to before and after care. Before and after care, we're talking about children that can be in that building in the elementary for somewhere between 8, sometimes 10, 12 hours a day. What the Y does really well is flexibility. They allow for programs. This is more the data points that we were going over, and this is part of why we want to go out for an RFP. You can be there one day, you can be there 2 days, you can be there 3 days. The other thing they do from an administrative standpoint is communicate directly with us and keep those open lines of communication. We just want to make sure, like us identifying different spaces and things like that, we want to make sure we're providing educational opportunities for those students where possible and where appropriate, recreational opportunities, and we're just providing all that we can be, because for some of our students, they're there 12 hours a day, elementary students. We really have to make sure that we're providing the best services and programs. That's really the whole intention. The Y is the first people, we've been talking to the Y about this, and And when we open up, we look at the RFP, we'll take a really good look at all the services. It's nothing, it's just important to note, it's nothing against the YMCA. They're a great community partner.
Yeah, I don't mean to bad mouth, but just, my kids do it a couple days a week. Maybe opening up different cases would be helpful, things they can do. Sometimes they can't really do anything. It's tough, to talk about elementary school districts. So maybe that will help in terms of like they can use different parts of the school. Maybe there's other resources they can use.
You identified that as well.
That'd be great. Maybe that would help.
Technology,
Right now they're strict.
other things available to libraries.
Technology would be great. I mean, I know
And
that's-
libraries,
Yeah, that'd be great.
stuff like that. So that's what we're.
That's what we're looking at. Yep.
Yep. Speaking of data points,
No, you give me a challenge, Leonore. So I went back, Mary Ellen was able to give you such a good thorough presentation that I was able to go back and look at the list to answer your question. We currently have 1,008 MTEX certificated staff who require substitutes. We currently have approved 485 teacher subs. We have 294 paraprofessionals currently employed. We have 154 approved sub-paras. We have approximately 50 secretaries, and I say approximately, who require substitutes because not all secretaries get substitutes when they're absent. Like at central office, we don't necessarily get substitutes. And we have 26 secretaries, sub-secretaries. So it's about 50%, and that's a pretty high threshold. About for every employee we have, we employ about half of a sub, or half of the amount of currently full-time employees. In each category, we have substitutes. The problem is, they don't just work for us exclusively. Substitutes in whatever category usually are employed by multiple boards of education. That's how they maintain consistent employment. So their availability is not exclusive to us, which is what compounds, or creates the problem at times in trying to meet the need of the position, of the vacancies that we have on a daily basis. But it's consistent in each category. We have about half the amount of subs for the amount of employees that we have.
I think it's also important, like you said, that they're not always available because they're working in other places.
Right. And we've looked at things, like we've raised our rates for substitutes at all level, for all position types. Over the years, we've raised our teacher sub rate to $105 to stay competitive. We've raised our paraprofessional sub rate. It's $13.50 for category B, or about, using a 6-hour day, that would be about $81, for a category B para. For a category C or D para, substitutes are paid $15.50 an hour, or about $93 for a 6-hour day. Just using 6 hours as a measuring point. So between the and our secretaries, off the top of my head, I think it's $13.50 as well for secretaries, substitutes.
Okay, moving on to the shared services.
So there was no shared services meeting this month as we had scheduled our budget workshops, so it was not like we wasted that time. However, there was some positive movement on the shared services front. I'm actually going to move it back to Mrs. Rogers to just update us on the township committee meeting on Monday night.
Yes, so on Monday night, the Township Committee had made a decision to eliminate their administration fees for us for our security at our district events. This is a cost savings to our district of about $40,000. We're very appreciative to the Township Committee. Decisions like this and their decision to give us the MAC to use for free for our dance program next year just show that we're working together, we're cooperating with each other, and we're trying to put the children of Middletown first and do the very best for them. So we're very happy about that. And that's all I got. Strategic planning, I don't know if John, you want to add anything, but yeah, we updated PIC as to our plan, which is just to have all of the PIC reps and presidents of the PTAs reach out to their PTAs and tell them to look at the strategic plan on the website from last year and to jot down a few ideas to bring back to the PTA meetings, what they thought worked, what they'd like to change, to give us a jump. So that's basically where we are right now.
And the RFP went out.
Yes, and the RFP went out for the strategic planning expert.
The responses are due back, I believe, on Friday. So at that point, we will be evaluating them and then meeting with the committee to review the responses and determine what direction to go in.
Do we have
Thank you.
I'm sorry, do we have a date set for that strategic planning committee meeting to follow up?
Not yet.
All right, so
We'll set it
we can
to-
take it offline, but we should probably do that ASAP because April's starting for lunch.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, we don't do personnel, but we should just give an update on negotiations. We met with the mediator. You want to just tell us?
Sure. As board members were briefed in closed session, we're currently in negotiations with the paraprofessionals unit. We are in the impasse process. Currently, it's a non-adversarial process utilizing the services of PERC, Public and Public Relations Commission. We had our first mediation session this past Monday, and we are scheduled to continue that process next Tuesday, I believe at 5 p.m.
Thank you. Moving on to old business. Okay, seeing no old business, we'll move on to new business.
I have an announcement. Can I do that in new business?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to announce that on April 16th, Middletown Township Friends of Diverse Learners is going to host a presentation on tiered learning in a general education setting right here at North from 6:30 to 7:30.
April 16th.
Yeah, why are we scheduling these things for the next of our board meetings? We can't really go and support them if we're here at a board meeting. I have it on my calendar.
I don't have it as a board meeting. I have,
We have the 10th.
I have
and we
April 10th.
I have April 10th as a
May
board
1st.
meeting, our only board meeting in April.
I have the
Yeah.
10th and the 16th and the 30th.
We're
No.
going to be at a lot of meetings.
May 1st, I think is the next one.
No, I know, it's just in, but I haven't written it down.
I think that was before even
It's
the
not-
changes get made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the 10th and the 1st.
10th and May 1st.
In one of our meetings, we talk about the New Jersey scores that we talked about, the public, in terms of home ratings or whatever they're called. Can we talk about that, what the drivers are, if remediation plans or whatever we have?
Yeah.
Some of those numbers, you look at them, you sort of list where you are with other school districts. We can do that in one of our workshops.
Yes. So the information was embargoed. It was recently released, as you know. So we are in the process of disseminating it. We are analyzing it and creating our own summary reports for the principals to review with their staff. And Mrs. O'Hagan, myself, Michelle, and Dr. George are meeting with each principal starting next week, Charlene?
Yes, we have to have our first meeting tomorrow at the school, but the bulk of them, the other 16, are all next week.
And then from there, then we will give a complete analysis to the board of district-wide performance. We have to review the information with the principals so they can start developing their plans.
Plans to, okay, so sorry. Are we going to have a school philosophy similar to we had last year?
Yep.
Anybody else?
Yep, just a quick recap. So as part of our Adopt a School program, I attended the PFA meeting at High School South, and that was on, I believe, the 12th of March. Oh, sorry. That was on the 12th of March. It was a very well-attended meeting in the media center. The centerpiece discussion was around the National Honor Society requirements, introducing a lot of the parents of younger students, myself included, to NHS requirements. The administration also, I thought, did a very nice job going over some of the challenges that the budget will face. I thought it was overall a great presentation. As I said, it was well attended. The media center was pretty packed. And next up on my agenda will be the next Thompson PFA meeting. So just an update to the board on that.
Great. Anybody else?
Yeah, Leonore and I attended today the South Science National Honor Society. 39 students got inducted. It was very impressive. And then after that, we attended Sushi Day at both high schools. And as members of the food service, and they were sold out. So,
before they sold out?
oh no, I don't need sushi.
Sushi, but then it's off.
It was sold out by the
But I
time.
spoke to the students, and the students loved it. But, okay.
I heard great things from a couple of teachers too.
Yeah, so it's a start, and they know next week that they need to prepare more to
Okay.
sell out. But looking forward to even more improvements in that area.
I attended the scholarship interviews at High School South, and that was very impressive. I was really proud of those kids. The top 15% get interviewed, and I thought to myself, how can we get the top 20% interviewed like we did in the past? And I thought it would be great if some more businesses were involved and would offer some scholarship money. A scholarship can be as small as $50, and I was thinking about maybe how in the future we could advertise that more.
I'm just wondering, did Sloan do anything, being that Sloan is a business in our area?
I don't have a list of the businesses.
Does anybody know?
I don't know of that offhand. I mean, we do have all the scholarship records if the board wants to know this.
I know we don't have that many businesses, that's why I'm just thinking.
Right,
it's
so a lot of the scholarships are started, by a particular person and then funded annually. So we don't normally get contacted by businesses to set them up. A lot of them are for in memory of somebody.
Right.
We do have a few dentists and stuff that do
Yeah.
There's a
scholarships for their
few.
businesses, yeah.
It might, to Leonore's point though, it might be worth reaching out to Sloan proactively, given that they are moving up the ranks as a large Middletown employer, and they're drawing families to the area to see what they have by way of community outreach to the schools, whether it's, internships or other opportunities for our students. It doesn't necessarily have to be monetary, but maybe we can take that up, what committee would be appropriate for that. We can, why don't we just, yeah, why don't we just add that to old business for the next meeting, we can give it a think of for next week and come back to it.
Sure.
I also had the opportunity to attend New Monmouth's PFA meeting again, very well attended. I also wanted to attend North's, but it was the same night as the budget presentation. I'll attend the next one.
We could actually tack it onto the scholarship committee as one of our responsibilities. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have any business? No. Okay. At this time, I'd like to open the mic to public comment. Please limit your comment to 3 minutes, and if you have a question at the end of your comment, please save it till the end of the comment to make the best use of your time.
My name is Julie Clark, and I'm a taxpayer and a can't hear.
Is that better?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just want to start off with paraprofessionals. I agree with what you said. Middletown, great school district. And you know what? These paraprofessionals help Middletown get there. And since, was it like 2005, the Affordable Care Act, when that came out, and the lawyer on the board that time decided to purposefully misinterpret it, and instead of give us benefits, they decided instead, no, just cut their hours so you don't have to pay the medical. Ever since then, this is how, paras were treated. It was, that's of the ways that it started. And then, last year, administration decided they were going to read the IEPs more carefully. And they decided parents do not have to go out during recess or in the lunchroom with their students. Some of these students have social issues, but that's okay. And then that was 20 minutes. So that wasn't a full 30 minutes that the parents had to sign out for. So the union said, these people don't even have time to go out for a cup of coffee. At least pay them for that 20 minutes. It's just a coffee break. So in turn, administration told the principals, make sure the breaks are at least 30 minutes. And what was first happening was that these powers were being pulled out of math classes or any other academic classes because you had to round up that 20 minutes, you had to make it 30 minutes. So, let's see. And then I think that stopped, but the parents in this district wouldn't complain about it anyway. They probably stayed in the math class anyway and just left for the 20 minutes and signed out for 30. But that's the type of paraprofessionals that work in their town. They give their time. They don't make it about the money, they make it about the child. But this is how they get paid back all the time. They're always under the gun, always penny pinching. And then you want to also turn around and say, what a great job. We couldn't do this without you, and you're right. Who would say that? So now, we're on to the question, I don't know why I'm looking at this without my glasses. Now you want to outsource files. You also demanded a lot more from us, Dr. Judge. We used to be what you call the soccer moms. I know a lot of people mean that as an insult, but a lot of us were proud of it. We came with special skills. But we were able to take days off without pay. That's the way it always was. And then you demanded more of a commitment from us as employees. And I think every paraprofessional stepped up to the plate. Even though you give them their little letters about how many sick days they took every year.
Ms. Clark, sorry, your time is up, that buzzer.
No, I also am taking Maria's turn.
Actually, the board president.
I yield my 3 minutes to Ms. Clark.
Then yield the minutes. Where does it say that I can't listen?
Board president manages the board meeting. There's about 100 other people in the audience. I don't know if any other person wants to speak.
You can take my 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Before we get into yielding time, we're just trying to be
Leslie, you're using up
respectful.
my time now.
Your time already expired. We're trying to be
Okay,
respectful.
but these people just gave me more minutes. Pamela, are you saying I
I
have to sit
could not
down?
read their minds before they said that, so I
Pamela,
was
are you telling me I have to sit
just. Can I
down?
finish what I'm saying? I'm not trying to be adversarial.
No, you did not let me
I'm
finish,
really
and I'm not gonna let you finish.
Well, because you did finish it for your 3 minutes, that's why I cut you off, and we're trying to move on. So, if there are no other persons who want to speak, I'll defer to Ms. Rogers as to whether the board will allow you to continue for a reasonable period of time.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening? Okay.
That's fine, but if there was, we would be not respecting them, that's all. So,
Thank you,
you
Lester.
may continue.
Now I'm gonna have to start over?
Knock yourself out.
So anyway, this is how paraprofessionals are treated in Middletown, basically. That's my point. But also, now I want to get to the outsourcing. First of all, the substitute list that Ms. Pekus could not find, there are 140 approved substitutes on that list. Some of them,
She came back up and said 154.
Let's just let her finish, and we can clarify later, if necessary.
some of those paraprofessionals are paraprofessionals that have lost hours. Like I said, they keep taking hours away because we don't need a paraprofessional for this 20 minutes, that 20 minutes. A lot of it happens in the high school. But for those paraprofessionals, and then they look for extra hours, and then they're told they can go on the substitute list, but for the same abilities that they have to work for $5 less an hour because they're on the substitute list, even though they're already board-approved paraprofessionals. And basically, I'm getting to the outsourcing. It feels like you're trying to target a specific group. And I know you put on your social media that it just seemed like just a few, it's just the ones they can't fill. But the positions that they can't fill are in high school. And if you see all the emails, I'll send them to you from the paraprofessionals in the high school that are constantly losing hours. And then when they go and ask to work in the blocks that they see substitutes in, they're told, it's not, what? They're told that it's not a good match. Or, no, not in the best interest of the student. That's the same line they give them over and over again. So there are paraprofessionals wanting to work these hours. And there are also paraprofessionals that are interested in working just 2 days a day, 2 hours a day. They were the same paraprofessionals let go last year, because lunch paraprofessionals last year only worked 1.5 to 2 hours a day. They were all let go. One of them actually was very upset about it because she has a second job and she said she can only do 2 hours a day. But the the administration told her then, no, there are no hours, there are no positions for 2 hours a day. Now there's a bunch of positions for 2 hours a day that nobody wants to fill, apparently. But there are a lot of people willing to fill those. A lot of paras that already have positions and want extra money. I mean, they want their money back. They want to work. They don't want to just get paid for nothing. They want to be able to work. They've been with these children, a lot of these children from early in years, and they've gone up through high school. And I know that you guys say you're an advocate for the public. These paraprofessionals are the public. They live and work in Middletown. And as a taxpayer, again, I'm going to say, administration positions have increased while enrollment has decreased throughout the years. And that's it. I'll save the rest for next week.
We'd be more than happy to meet any specifics on that information, as we're always available to meet, and we continue to meet.
Meet with the high school paraprofessionals?
No, to meet with you as it relates to specific, you can provide for us specific names or people that are available, so we can check those schedules.
I provided you with names before, Dr. George. But actually, my question is, why aren't the high school paraprofessionals given those positions that you say cannot be filled in-house? Because they want to fill them.
If I may, that's the precise type of question Dr. George was talking about. I'm going to advise him not to respond to that to the public, because that's more of a personnel-related matter. That'll be more appropriate to discuss in a closed, well, not closed door, but in a private setting with the administration. Your public, you concluded your statement.
No, but this is, I'm just explaining my question.
I don't understand, but the invitation was to continue the dialogue with Dr. George, with the appropriate members of his administration, to attempt to come to a resolution and or agree to disagree on what the issue may be. But the public comment period is not to have that meeting now. You made your comments, you asked your questions. The administration has indicated a willingness, a desire to continue the dialogue with you.
I do have another question now. So outsourcing paras, how much would that cost?
Okay,
Less than actually paying a district paraprofessional?
So if I may, Ms. Clark, again, you had your opportunity, the resolution
Somebody else asked that question?
the resolution that is on...
How much does it cost?
The resolution that is on the agenda for tonight's work session and next week's board meeting is not to outsource paraprofessionals. Thank you.
Oh, wait a minute, another thing, Dr. George. We did have that meeting, and you did say that you were going to outsource substitutes. You did not say regular paraprofessionals.
Okay, so again, the resolution
Because
is
you
not...
mentioned the meeting
The
before.
resolution is for substitute services, it's not to outsource a particular category of employees in the district. I'm going to ask you again politely, because you had your opportunity, gave you more time, you sat down, it's over. Now,
And I have a question for you though, Leslie.
you can ask me on Tuesday, okay? So, but thank you, respectfully, we have to continue the board meeting. You've had your opportunity pursuant to law. We want to be respectful of the process. We respected you, gave you additional time to speak. You sat down, so let's please not try to abuse the process. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
The 30 minutes hasn't elapsed, has it? For public speaking?
The 30 minutes has not yet elapsed. If someone else wants to speak, you're more than welcome.
Does anyone
However,
else wish to speak?
Yes.
yes, sure.
What's my next question? Well, you can ask the question about how much is how much is an outsourced paraprofessional?
Is a taxpayer bill ton also. I'm
I'm
curious to
sorry,
know how much.
can you please state your name?
I'm sorry.
For the record.
Lori Kingston Fish. And I actually, I'll take this opportunity to, I find the use of the word transparent a little loose, as I understand that word to me. And I'm concerned about that kind of transparency because we found out about all this yesterday. And we know that we'll be getting letters firing us in May. So to hear that we were going to be, or that paraprofessionals were going to be outsourced was extremely disturbing. Extremely. And I don't find that process to be very transparent at all. What would have been transparent would be to say, you know, those of you who are regular, we're keeping you, don't worry about it. But none of that was said. And unless there's something in writing saying that I have a job after May, I'm still going to be concerned. And I think that's only natural for me. So frankly, and for us, like if you're having trouble finding substitutes to be, you know, for our jobs where we're sometimes assaulted, or sometimes we're dealing with dangerous substances, where sometimes, you know, I mean, we are, I think we can say, administration top heavy. And we are the hands and feet of this district. Yeah, we're the ones, you know, who actually see and talk to and speak to these students. I don't doubt your caring and your concern for them, I don't. But I do doubt that you really know what that really entails every day. And frankly, you know, we do it because we love our students. And we want the best for them. And I think everybody in here, I mean, there was a time where I think someone said that, you know, we try to ensure our jobs by further handicapping the child. Nothing could be further from the truth. My greatest achievement was taking a 1-to-1, making a 3-to-1, and then he was a 4-to-1, and I wear that like a badge. Okay, and that's my goal, any kid I have. I don't want him to be a 1-to-1 the rest of his life. That's a disgrace, and to suggest that of any of us is a disgrace. And frankly, so how much is this outsourcing going to cost the district? Will it can you get more substitutes in here if you raise the substitute hourly rate? I mean, $15 to take a punch? I took a headbutt today for 20 to the face for $21 an hour. I did because, in spite of that, I love that young man. Okay? However, someone coming in, a substitute coming in, may not have the same affection or regard. So,
Ma'am, if I may, so just the term outsource is not part of the resolution that's before the board. It's a substitute service that the board is utilizing a competitive contracting procurement method.
John said to Thomas.
Ma'am, with all due respect, I didn't cut you off. Can you please let me respond to her question, your colleague's question? The board is utilizing a competitive contracting process to solicit proposals. So there's no indication of the cost yet because we haven't received the proposals from the vendors. If the costs are out of the roof, the board might say, let's not do this. If the costs are reasonable and competitive, the board may pursue it, not to outsource, but to supplement, as you heard, the business administrator, the superintendent, the board president, Ms. Manuiz, and other board members reiterate Ms. Pekas this evening. So again, the resolution that's on the agenda is simply to advertise, to solicit proposals from interested firms to provide a service. Once the board receives those proposals, they will review it in due ordinary course and make a decision whether to proceed with purchasing and contracting with the vendor for those services. Thank you so much.
I just want to clarify something that was said procedurally. You said that you were informed yesterday that you were going to get a letter in May as it relates to outsourcing. I think that's part, if you could just let me finish. If you could just, there's a letter every spring that we're in the process of reviewing IEPs and that these are one-year assignments. And as I pointed out earlier, our body of work is that we worked diligently last year at like 95 to 98% placement prior to July 1. We'll have that same commitment along those lines again this year. It's really important to say this. The services that we are legally responsible to provide for the children are the number one driver of this decision. So we're looking for the long-term viability of those services so that we can maintain our programs with fidelity. It has absolutely nothing to do with respect for our current employees. I started the evening with that. It's important from my perspective, I think, to the board to really clearly state our vision. That's our position as we close tonight. No one has questions. No one's questioning the dedication of you as employees or the importance of the outstanding work that you provide for our most at-risk children. So just want to reiterate and agree with your position as it relates to that. Okay?
Frankly, sir, our worth is on the table.
Yeah. Outstanding work, but you're going to outsource. You're going to look to outsource. Doesn't make sense.
Continue to use a word that's not consistent with our actions.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Thank you.
My name is Donnie Dewey. I just want you to understand our point of view. You are saying substitutes, we understand that. We know there's a shortage. Part of that is because the people you put on the sub list every year, they need a job. They can't wait around. They have to go look for another job. Some people retire. A lot of people are cut every year. So over the years, I feel like everybody feels a little disrespected by the authority. She did say, we do expect every year we get our termination letter. You do respond quickly now in July. We do appreciate that. But now you're saying you're going to bring in substitutes from another company. You have to understand how we're feeling. They're going to take over eventually because it's going to be cheaper for you per hour. So eventually it's going to be less and less of us every year. We see the handwriting. It's been coming for a while. So it's just, you have to understand where these women are all coming from. It's understandable, it's to be expected, and it's a hardship for many of us. You know, looking around, a lot of us aren't 25 anymore. So to go, so this is our livelihood. You know, we do love our jobs. We do not get big raises every year. You don't hear us complaining even about that. I am one of those people who works through my break and has for years. But yet on my time card it says I took one. So just keep that in mind. We are humans and we are feeling this.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stacey Karen and I'm a taxpayer of Middletown. I'm also a substitute teacher and a substitute paraprofessional. And I guess this question can go directly to you. The job notices will still go out.
Could you just address your questions to the board chair,
Okay.
and then we'll...
Okay, so the notices will still go out on ASAP for the substitutes because it is actually very competitive, and I'm surprised that you have only a 93% rate for filling the substitute jobs because, like, I'm on another district too, And the jobs for Middletown are on the 7th, so you have to have fast fingers. And we all of the substitutes talk about that. And we also contact each other if it's like, oh, I have to cancel a job, I ended up having a doctor's appointment. We contact each other and we say, do you want my job? So I just want to make sure that those notifications are still going to go out on ESOP.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll still get first dibs. It's only for anything that can't be fulfilled, for whatever reason.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment about administration. I've been on the board for a little over a year, and this is something that a lot of people don't know. But in that time, we have eliminated 3 administrative positions. Through, well, it is 3, so, in 1 year, so, just, you know, an FYI.
Hello, my name is Maria Gresby. I'm a taxpayer. My children have been educated through Middletown Township, and I'm also an employee. And I have to be honest, I feel like you're balancing the budget on the backs of the children and on the taxpayers. And on top of it, what I see down the road is me losing my job, so I get a double win. Perhaps instead of outsourcing and spending money that way, you could increase substitute rates. A lot of your subs, particularly para subs, are recently graduated certificated people who are looking for jobs. Keep them. Give them more money. You're training them. Give them a job. Maybe make paras salaried employees. That's a tremendous amount of respect that we don't see every day. I'm a certificated teacher, and where I am today, I can tell you I love my job. And for those of you who have sat in a classroom, my job is the best part of teaching. I don't have to do report cards. I don't have to do all that grading, all the paperwork that goes with teaching. While it's part of the job, it's not the best part of the job. My job is the best part, Dr. George, when you were in the classroom. I get to connect with kids. I get to watch them learn. And as selfish as it sounds, and if you've been in a classroom, I know you're all back here, when they get it and the light bulb goes on, it is the best thing that ever happens to you. And that's what my job is every day. And what I'm looking at today is losing my job and losing that experience. And as a para, we are told we are our students' advocates. And you are balancing that budget on their backs. And when I was on my last comment is going to be is something the principal said in a faculty meeting one day when we were discussing those children who require more from us, who make us reach inside ourselves because our job is to every day find something positive and find a way for that child to succeed. And she said, if we're not there for the children who need us the most, then who are we here for? And I suggest that all of you think about that. When you vote, when you decide where you're going to cut your money, who needs you the most? And who are you thinking about?
Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one else come to the mic, I'd like a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions?